All right, let's get going. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Teaching Live. It's week 5. We're just back from half term, as I imagine you guys must be as well. So we've got a smaller group today because half term it's kind of been split over 2 weeks with some schools. So we've got and a couple, as usual, a couple of latecomers just dropping in. So we'll just let those join. So a slightly smaller group this morning, but we're all ready to rock and roll. It's a bit of a grey and windy day actually up here in the Loon Valley this morning. Not the nicest of days, so probably a good day to get out the writing book and do a bit of creative writing. How are you this morning, Pie?
I'm in peak condition as always, and I'm ready to totally rock and roll with this one. We're on our second chapter now of our story, which sort of loosely based a little bit on Tyger. We're only doing 4 chapters over a month, so we can't go the full hog, of course, and write a whole novel. But onto the second bit, where our main character now gets deeper involved with this sort of magical creature. So I'm ready for it. And you, David, you in good form?
I am indeed, yes. Well, it's my children's half term this week. So you might see a stray walk in somewhere in the back, which I'll shift them on if they appear. But yes, they've been fairly well behaved, fairly quiet, as is the dog, which is nice.
Nasty little consumptive cough there. Okay, so let's crack on with the game. And I thought we'd do a game that involves, that in writing you often get that little phrase, and I think it's very useful: to his amazement, to his surprise, to his horror, or her, of course, to her disbelief, and of course you've got to remember the comma if you're writing it. To her disbelief, a unicorn stood in front of her, or whatever it's going to be. And I think just that little phrase, it's one, you don't want to overdo it and have it, too many times. But I think as a way of injecting a bit of tension, bit of suspense, a way of introducing something, it's not a bad little strategy. So I thought we'd play a game around that. And first of all, David, we've got to decide on a setting. So
okay,
we could have different settings.
Can we go for like in a jungle setting?
Okay, and do you want to be A or B? A is to his and B is to her. And then after 2 minutes, we swap over.
I'll go to her.
Okay, so I'm partner A to his. And then I've given a little list in the notes, but it may well be that children can just think of their own ones. So if you can think of your own one, that's fine. Otherwise, use some of mine. Okay, so we're in a jungle. To his horror, an enormous leopard padded its way towards him.
To her disbelief, the tarantula raised its front 2 legs and displayed its fangs.
To his amazement, the rain from the storm hardly touched him, as the canopy above seemed to offer near total protection.
To her excitement, the hanging roots offered the opportunity to swing from tree to tree.
A bit like Tarzan.
Yes.
What I've realized, David, is if you choose a setting that you don't know much about, it's going to be hard to do, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's change the setting. So give me another setting that I might have more of a chance with.
A midnight in a city at night.
Okay. To his amusement, a clown appeared, and I know some people don't find them amusing. To his amusement, a clown appeared walking on his hands.
Okay. To her shock, she stumbled across a drain and her foot was trapped.
To his dismay, snow began to fall on the icy streets.
To her joy, the chocolate factory door was wide open.
To his dismay, the door slammed shut and he could hear the sound of the lock turning.
To her despair, banging and pushing the door made no difference.
To his disbelief, can't think what he was called. What was he called? The man who ran the chocolate factory, Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka appeared. I gather, I've got to do a rant now. I gather that somebody has rewritten parts of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to make them more politically correct. So Augustus Gloop is no longer called fat. He's called enormous. I think I'd rather be called fat. I don't want to be called enormous. Anyway, after 2 minutes, John, people swap over. David and I got a bit of a story going there, didn't we? We were sort of following the same line. I thought that was rather a good way of doing it. But I think people have probably got the idea, John. So if you can give us 4 minutes, and after 2 minutes, swap over roles.
I will certainly. I'll get the timer up. In 1 second. Here we go. There we go. All right. We don't. Well, do we need to swap over roles because we're doing the same thing? Because we're so it's more change. If you're getting stuck, change setting. I think, well, rather than swap it. So I won't disturb you at 2 minutes.
Okay.
But if you're running out of ideas in one particular setting, just change the setting. I think is the best way of doing it. So 4 minutes on the clock. To my astonishment, I'm going to click start now. And that's your 4 minutes up. So if you could bring your attention back to the whiteboard, we'll go straight to the TeachingLive website. Excuse me. And we'll go to the session page for this morning's session. That's the 9:30 session. And we'll go to the Padlet activity. So here we are.
And we're looking at building suspense here, John. Something that we've done before. I think it's a very important part of writing, because if you wrote a novel or a story that didn't have suspense or tension, that didn't at some points keep the reader on the edge of their seat a little bit, I think it would probably be quite boring. So the ability to build up the tension, build up the suspense, get the reader thinking, oh no, what on earth is going to happen next? I think that's quite an important part of being a writer. So it's something I emphasize quite a lot. Get your main character into a situation and then build up the suspense. So we've got our main character now inside a building, and is going to meet the sort of Tyger type character. So I've used so what we're going to do is we're going to analyze my paragraph and then have a go at doing an innovation. An innovation simply means you take the idea and run with it in your own way. So I'll just read it to you. Outside, a jagged claw of lightning crackled across the sky and thunder growled overhead. Inside, Joe staggered through the abandoned building, searching desperately for somewhere to hide. If you remember, he was being chased by a dodgy person. Old timbers leaned at crazy angles. Rusted crates piled high and discarded machinery lay scattered. I've repeated the word piled there. To his horror, he could just make out that there was no way out. He was trapped. So we got some familiar little tactics that we've looked at before. So if we go down to the grid a bit more, John, we'll try and analyze it, and I'll show you my innovations. So we got the old outside, inside. But in that first sentence, outside, comma, I've got a bit of dodgy weather. And things like storms, fog, and snow are very good for building a negative atmosphere. And it's not just lightning crackled across the sky, it's a jagged claw of lightning. So I've used a simile. The lightning is like a jagged claw, and then I've just said a jagged claw of lightning. So I've turned it into a metaphor, which is where you get rid of the word like. So I've got a jagged claw, and that's because tigers, in my case, actually, I've got a wolf. Wolves have claws or talons, I could have said. So I thought that was quite clever. Across the sky, and the thunder growled overhead, a bit in the same way the tiger or my wolf would growl. So I'm doing something that actually SF Sai does a lot in Tyger and in Varjak Paw. The imagery that he uses is, in Varjak Paw, the imagery is very much cat imagery. So he will say the moon shone like a white whisker, because cats have whiskers. So he's very clever like that. So I thought I'd have a go at doing that. So I'm setting it up with the outside sentence, some dodgy weather. Doesn't have to be weather. It could be some sort of the sound of the person approaching who's going to try and, who's chasing your main character. Now I've got Joe as my main character. Obviously, you will use your main character. Now I've got my inside sentence, inside, comma. Now, Joe staggered through the abandoned building. So a touch of a hint of description going on. It's an abandoned building, and could have been running through, but I've gone for staggered, which sort of suggests that he's in trouble, searching desperately for somewhere to hide. Notice I've got that first bit, he's staggering through the building, comma, and then I've added an in clause on to show what he's doing, desperately searching desperately. Then I got my sentence of three things to build up the picture for the reader, and I've gone for sort of negative things. I've made it sound horrid to build the tension up. Old timbers leaned at crazy angles, rusted crates piled high, and discarded machinery lay scattered. And you know, I read that so many times, and I put that piled in. I think what happened when I wrote it, I went rustic crates piled high and discarded machinery piled. And then I thought, no, piled's no good, lay scattered. But I forgot to get rid of that piled. Anyway, to his horror, so now I've got the reaction of the main character, to his horror, to his terror, to his surprise, to his disbelief. He could just make out what there was no way out. So he's trapped in there. And I've got that short, tight, punchy, he was trapped. So I've ended the paragraph on a punchy short sentence. Then I've got my innovation. So this is the bit that I want everybody to have a go at. I went for fog outside, comma, fog swirled through the streets, comma, and then my in clause wrapping itself around the houses. So it was sort of smothering, tying them up, bandaging them. Inside, Sally crept through the darkness, comma, wondering where she could hide. So I did another one of those in clauses. And then I got my sentence of 3 to build a description. Broken furniture, abandoned mattresses, and battered beams lay strewn on the floor. Then to her dismay, comma, she saw that the windows were barred. So I'm trying to get this sense that the main character is trapped. And then my short type punchy, there was no way out. Now, obviously you can't do the whole paragraph, but you could experiment with the different techniques there in each sentence. And David's kindly put it up. If you click on that, it'll go larger, I guess. There it is, just to remind you. And then you go back, and we got various people logging on already. David can see what's happening. So do it sentence by sentence. And Finley's straight off with outside, the rain hammered down as the moon got covered up by the dark grey clouds. Couple of little tips for you, Finley. You don't have to say the rain. You could go rain hammered down as the moon. And then that got covered. Do you need the word got? As the moon covered, as the moon was covered by the dark grey clouds. So a little bit of tweaking there, Finley, but a nice start for you. Bethany from Ludden, to her excitement. Bethany, you've missed something vital out in terms of punctuation. You know what it is. There was a single door open in the ancient dusty hallway. So it's a nice, I like your ancient dusty hallway. Kieran, outside, the wind whirled through the deserted streets like a monster. You might develop that, that image a bit more, like a what monster, or name the monster.
That's good though, Kieran. I like that.
Yeah,
one.
it is good. Yeah.
Luca and Reese, you need to work on yours. To her believe. So it's either disbelief with an F at the end. To her believe doesn't really make sense. She explored the lost city of Atlantis and ate a Big Mac while swimming. Well, I'm not sure how you eat a Big Mac while swimming. I think it will get a little bit soggy. I think you need to work on that one a little bit. To her surprise, Amaya from TJS, to her surprise, she saw a huge creature looming over her. I think I might use a stronger word than surprise. Surprise is kind of like, ooh. I think I'd be a little bit more than surprised if a huge creature was looming over me. I might be shocked. I might be horrified. But it's a good start. Thomas from TJS, I raced down the street, my heart pounding, trying to escape the robber with bees. And you only ever use one exclamation mark, Thomas. Unless you're in social media where you can use as many as you want. But when you're actually writing a story, you only ever use one.
Carter at St. Patrick's, to his surprise, comma, well done, there was a tiger sitting on his bed when he woke up. To his surprise, a tiger sat on his bed. I don't know if you need there was. You could trim that a wee bit, you know. Archie from FA, outside a bolt of lightning was striking at an old abandoned house. You could get rid of was striking, get rid of that was and the ing bit. Outside, a bolt of lightning struck at the old abandoned house. Not sure if you need both old and abandoned. I'd just go for abandoned, I think. Frankie, watch that capital letter. Outside, the rain hammered down as the moon started to rise. So that's all fine. Just need the capital letter and a comma, I think, after the outside.
Let's want to see if one or two people can try one of the two of the sentences of 3 for description. They're quite tricky to do, but they're really effective.
Yeah,
and
have
a look at the Pie's sentence of 3 was, if I just pull it back up, old timbers leaned at crazy angles, rusted crates piled high, and discarded machinery lay scattered. It's a really powerful way of doing things. Whenever I write things now, I always think, oh, a sentence of 3. For some reason, why is it that a sentence of, because this idea of a sentence of 3, it was like the government got obsessed with it during COVID, didn't they? It was like, stay safe, 3, always 3, wasn't it? What is it about 3 phrases of 3, sentences of 3 that's so strong, Pie?
I think it harks back to the 3 pigs. There were 3 bears. It's a traditional tale thing. There are often 3 brothers, and it was the youngest brother who won the day. It's a very, very old traditional thing, and there's something about the power of it, not once, not twice, but 3 times. So it's rooted in, I think, old traditional tales. Just something very powerful about that repetition of 3 ideas rather than 2. And politicians use it all the time, you're right. So Nicole at Forest, inside, Ahmed looked around the abandoned shop, looking for a hiding spot in case something happened. You got looked and looking. Nicole?
Daniel from Troon. Outside, the owls hooted and the grey fog covered the cherry blossom streets of Japan. Ivy crept towards a door. The windows were barricaded. There was no way out except through the door. You got a good scene going there, Daniel. You need to work a bit on your punctuation. You've missed a couple of full stops and commas, and you've also got a bit of repetition where you've got through the door twice. But a good start.
Yeah, it sounded good to my ear.
Yes,
because I couldn't see what he'd written, couldn't see how it was written down. So he's onto a good thing there, but needs tidying, obviously. Amelia from Ludden, to Lily's surprise, she ended up in the abandoned house shivering of nerve. Nervously shivering? There was no hope. Ding, 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 ding.
Noah from Ludden, outside, a stripe of lightning flashed across the sky. When he turned around, you need a comma there, Noah. When he turned around, a person started to run after him, so he sprinted into a nearby building. To her horror, it was a dead end. Dun, 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 dun. So you've missed out a comma after to her horror, but you've got he and then her. So you've got to sort out the gender of the person you're talking about there. But it was definitely something to work on. Shows you even how difficult it even is just for a paragraph to hold the whole thing together carefully without rereading it and editing. It's hard to write even just a single paragraph without having to go over it again.
What I do, John, is I try and see it in my mind. So when I was writing mine, I sort of, in my head, I saw a darkened setting with my main character creeping around in it. And if while I'm writing the paragraph, I hold that in my mind, it helps me to keep the same mood, the same atmosphere. Otherwise, I might chuck something in that doesn't really fit with the previous sentences.
Yes.
I like Jessica's from Ludden. It's moved now, which is very annoying. But whatever wrote Jessica, there it is. Outside, the wolf's clawing at the door. A wolf clawed. Always when you get was and ing, you might be able to tighten it sometime. There was an ancient house which is abandoned. All of us have used the word abandoned and ancient. I wonder if there are any synonyms. And that's, John, when you're editing, not a bad idea to get a thesaurus out. Use a thesaurus when you're editing. Otherwise, it slows down the writing process, but you can get some alternative language going, which might surprise the reader a bit. I like Isla's, a bubbly feeling curled inside Ivy's stomach. That's really nice.
Yeah, that's very
good. The
good,
wind whipped through her hair. She felt ecstatic as she watched the thrashing waves splash against several rocks, reminding her of happy times. That is a cracking good piece of writing, Isla. Well done.
It is. It's excellent. I really like a bubbly feeling curled inside
Yeah,
the stomach.
never heard that
That's
before.
A really clever sentence.
Yeah.
Very good.
And she's revealing a little bit about what the main character's thinking, reminding her of happy times. And she's done it with that trick I've mentioned a number of times, comma, and then add on an in clause, reminding, wondering, hoping, wishing, thinking about. So you reveal what your character's thinking or feeling in that way. So it's a good little trick to do. Well done.
Okay, we need to come out of the Padlet.
That's a shame. I was getting really excited. Well, we've got some good sentences there, I thought, John. Some good work.
Indeed. Some very good sentences. We'll go back to the session page. And have we got any audio this week, David?
Have we? Yes, we have.
Just asking.
We've got loads, actually. Because obviously we had an extra week, didn't we? So I was watching them come through. In fact, I get an email every time somebody posts something, which is not a great idea, really, because my email sometimes goes a bit crazy. But throughout the week, there were children posting, and spoilt for choice yet again. But there must have been 50 or 60, maybe, posted. So again, like we say, every single week for the teachers, if you can navigate your children there, and if you got that spare 10 minutes somewhere, do have a listen. But I have chosen one, and it's one that has the words with it. So you can actually read it as you're listening to it. And this one's from St. Patrick's Primary in Scotland, and it's in the P7 class. And this piece of writing is from Carrie. Let me play. Sorry?
I'm just going to see if I can find it on the... How far down is it?
This is the cherry blossom one, David. I noticed that one. There are a lot of excellent ones.
I'm looking for it.
I thought,
see if I can get it up on screen.
We were really spoilt for choice this time. There's a lot from St. Patrick's really gone for it. Stone with Woodford, there were some superb pieces of writing. Yeah. St. George's.
Second row, John.
Yeah, St. George's in Bolton Parish, of course. A lot of very, very good bits of writing. So some people really going for it.
Right. Okay. Right, let me just share screen. Hold on a second.
This is Monica Mackenzie, Ignored the Wind. I mean, it's great little lines in it, this one.
And it's well read as well, so.
Here we go. This one on the left.
Yes.
Chapter 1. It was a windy evening in February. The cherry blossoms bloomed and covered the streets of Troon. A few streetlights flickered, casting shadows in the alleys where anything might be hidden. Monica Mackenzie ignored the wind. She was staring ahead at the checkpoint. Monica held on to her hat tight as the wind swept the sand down Golden Troop Alley. She could see the soldiers checking people's passes, turning most of them back from the border between Troon and Arran, where the snow stayed. Next in line, please, exclaimed the guard, waiting patiently for the next person. He held out a black-gloved hand, and Monica handed over a pass. Where are you headed, young lady? He snapped with anger. I'm taking a cake round to a customer for my mum, Monica replied, smiling firmly. The guard checked the pass and curtly nodded his head. Monica went past the guards and got on the ferry. A while later, Monica jumped off the ferry. Here, the streets were cleaner, shop lights shimmered the displays, and people chattered as if they didn't mind about the people around them. How Monica wished that she was like them and not a foreigner in her own land. Taking a shortcut down Melody Lane, Monica lowered her head, minding her own business. Head down, keep her out of trouble. Her mum always drummed that into her head. She swung round as a as a man that she hadn't noticed before quickly approached, pulling her arm and tugging her into the shadows at the side of the alley. "I'll be taking that," he murmured. Grabbing Monica's parcel, there was a pause. "But any cat you have." Monica ducked down and stomped on the man's shoe and ran up the alley, squeezing through a small gap. But the end was blocked by an enormous brick wall, making Monica cornered. The man's shadow cast through the gap towards Monica. It had seemed to stretch out and hold him in his coat of arms. Monica gasped. She could see the man's eyes full of greediness as he shuffled forward towards Monica, then noticed a small window tucked behind a bunch of barrels, and a moment later he was inside.
Excuse me.
Well, there you go. There's something about that pie that I can visualize it like a film as that's being read. I can see what's going on. I can see the alleyway. I know how people are feeling, and it's really well. Some great description in there as well, Pie.
Yeah, it was beautifully read too, with expression and absolute clarity.
I thought it was great. I loved some of the little details in it. So the guard didn't just hold out his hand; he held out a black gloved hand.
Yes,
she got a cracking sentence of 3 in as well, which I noticed because I'm a bit on those this morning. It was where she was describing here the streets are cleaner, shop light shimmers, the displays, and people chattered as if they didn't mind about the people around them. I thought it was a cracking sentence of 3.
Yeah,
it was really good.
It's an interesting one because it's fairly close to my one.
Yes.
Which really helps you when you're writing, but obviously the bits that I get excited about are where people come up with their own innovative little ideas themselves, and that always excites me. I always think, oh yeah, it's a really good idea. So because I can see a lot of people have hugged fairly closely, and it's given you a really good piece of writing.
Yeah, well, if you're being asked to write quite a long piece and you've got a framework to do it,
yes,
it's quite often quite a good idea, which is why you talk about innovating a lot, Pie.
It is, yes. It's I mean, it's basically what you do with nonfiction. You know, if you're writing instructions, your instructions are going to be structured in the same way that all instructions are written. It's Shakespeare did this. He wrote over 30 plays, and nearly all of them were retellings of well-known stories. He didn't make many up, but it was how he wrote them was the bit that mattered. And there were some really nice little innovative tweaks in there. Same with a lot of them. I was looking at Zara's from Stone with Woodford again. She's got some nice extra detail that she's used to bring it alive, to make it her own story. With a sigh, she walked into the beautiful part of Glasgow. Posh cars drove through the streets, and on it goes. And in hers, you got somebody moving from the border between the Glasgow ghetto and the rest of the city. Looked terrifying. Jenna took a deep breath and marched on. So yeah, some good innovations there, and beautifully read. Well done. Looking forward to the next chapter, John.
Yes, indeed. So we need to go on to the live writing Jotcast. So back to the session page. Get in there and listen to some of those. There's some really good stuff. On to the live writing Jotcast.
It will be key, John, when you're writing your second chapter, make sure you reread your first chapter in order to write the second one. And that's something I didn't do. And I moved from snowy weather to stormy weather without realizing it. So, well, I did do it, actually. I did reread. But what happened was I forgot that I'd set it with snow, and then started to introduce thunder and lightning, which was a bit annoying. But, I can go back and edit. So that's all fine. Okay, so what we're going to do now is you get your main character into this abandoned sort of place. We've all got slightly different places, settings, and exactly the same as in Tyger. there is some sort of creature in there that is going to rescue your main character from this sort of gang of bullies or whatever it is that you've got on the go. And what I've done is I've extracted some of the description. So what we're going to do is we're going to write descriptive sentences as if they were in a story about your creature. Now, we've done a lot of work on creatures, so it's not going to work as if it's a mouse or a gerbil. That would just sound funny. So you've got to choose a creature, and it's tempting to do a tiger, but tiger's already been done. That was done by SF. So we've got to choose a creature, and I went for a wolf. So I think the sorts of creatures that might be able to frighten away a gang or a fierce man who's trying to rob a child, I think you're looking at wolves, foxes, leopards, a deep throaty growl from a lion. Could be a bird, could be an eagle, could be a huge owl with enormous talons and a great beak. So you've got to choose some sort of powerful creature that would fight off, be able to fight off or frighten, terrify an intruder, a bad person. So let's have a look at my sentences. At that moment. Now, that is a bit like To His Horror. And I think that's another good one. At that moment, in an instant, out of the blue, those dramatic connecting words and phrases that add in a punch. At that moment, in an instant, out of the blue, without warning. And then I've got something growled. So I'm hiding what it is so the reader starts imagining it's that old empty word, but I made it fierce with that growled, deeper than thunder. So a little bit of an image there, deeper than thunder. And then out of the darkness, a bit like outside, inside, but this is out of the darkness, out of the gloom, out of the shadows, comma, not one, but two. And I think often when describing creatures, the eyes are very, and people actually, the eyes are very important. Two pairs. How can you have two pairs of orange eyes, John?
Well, if you've got a four-eyed wolf, Pie.
Oh dear, back to the drawing board again.
Edit it, yeah.
Yeah, I think I must have been thinking two orange eyes appeared, and then I must have thought a pair of orange eyes, and I've ended up now with two pairs and a four-eyed wolf. So there you go. A pair of orange eyes appeared, a flash of grey, and the whitest of teeth. So what I'm doing there is, apart from making a complete mess of it, what I'm doing is I'm giving little hints, little clues. So I've got the growling, I've got the orange eyes, a flash of grey, and the whitest of teeth. So what I've not done is said, at that moment, a dirty great wolf appeared. I've built the tension by giving little hints. So what little hints would you give? And then it was huge and grey. So again, I'm still hiding what it is. And I've gone for a very short, punchy one there. It threw back its shaggy head and howled. So what noise or action is your creature going to make that will really frighten the intruder, the person who is, or people who are chasing your main character? So I've got what it looks like. I've got a bit about the sound, and then I've gone for the smell. He could smell an earthy, musty scent and watched as her pelt of grey fur. So the pelt is the animal's skin with the fur on it, and very often in animals the skin isn't stretched tight. It is on a hippo because they're very greedy and very large, but on animals like wolves or tigers, it's almost as if the skin sort of moves, and that's the pelt of grey fur ripple across her back. It's a bit of description and what we can smell. We've had what it sounds like. She leaned her head. So this is the creature. She leaned her head forwards and sniffed. Then she licked his skin. So this is the creature now, having chased the intruder off, making friends with my main character. She licked his skin with her rough pink tongue. And then her eyes again. Her eyes sizzled as if heated by fire. He could see kindness, but also a well of sadness. So we're writing story sentences about your chosen creature. What does it look like? What sounds does it make? What does it smell like? Go for some of that detail. And we've done a lot of this, actually, John, in the poetic writing that we did. And I didn't find a way of doing it, but it might be interesting if somebody could manage to get a kenning in there somehow. So John's gone for that in an instant, at that moment, something. So he's going for an empty word by the look of it, a movement, an empty idea. So a movement startled. So the reader's now thinking, what is that movement that startled him? So he's building the tension. In the corner, as a shape appeared, began to form. See, I'm trying to second guess him. Began to solidify, make solid, appear out of the shadows. In the corner, a shape began to solidify out of the shadows. Two, he's going for the eyes now. He's gone for orange ones. Two orange eyes narrowed. And seemed to bore through him or her. That boring is sort of staring right in. So nice one, John.
Yeah, I was quite happy with that.
Yeah, it reads nicely. It flows. So he reread it and he's got it up now. So we're off, David. And presumably you can see it all coming in your end.
Yeah, it's coming through now, thick and fast.
See, Jessie and Lois from St. Patrick's, a huge brown beast came lurking towards her. I think you could hide that a little bit more. You're sort of giving the game away too soon there. It's tricky because you've got to get it right. You can't keep a reader hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. You've got to reveal a little bit of a time, but give them enough to keep them going.
I think that came looking. I'd get rid of that came. The huge brown beast lurked. Came, went, got or get. Those three are very much speech language, and we can always strengthen it in writing. Hayden, at that moment, something towered over him, its eyes of fire beaming down at him. I think I might use a semicolon there rather than that comma. It's either a full stop or a comma or a semicolon.
Georgiana's just gone for one sentence, which is really good. He could smell the cold blood. The blood.
Oh, my goodness.
That's great, Georgiana. Love that sentence.
Elliot and Leith. At that moment, something began chasing me. Full stop, I think you need. I could see flashes of orange and black when the streetlights passed. It was freezing, but I ran for my life until I was cornered. Nice use of the short, punchy sentence.
Kieran from St. Patrick's. Suddenly a figure started to slither out of the shadows, growling in a low, deep voice. Good.
Now that's interesting, that slithered, John, because Louisa's, without warning, a figure came out of the shadows. And I think that's a good example where came, went, got, and get. And those ones are like warning lights. So, Louisa, you could strengthen that by changing that word came to get a stronger impression. Slithered makes it sound really scary, like a snake.
Now, Sonny from Ludden, you've given the game away here. Tiago crept round the corner, I like the name of your character, and saw a giant 10-foot big capybara with orange eyes. Now, Tiago crept round the corner and suddenly saw two orange eyes glistening in the sunlight or whatever. You shouldn't tell me that it's a giant capybara in your first sentence, because you're immediately giving the game away. You've got to hide your creature until the end. And another point there, Sonny, you've said giant and big. If it's a giant capybara, it's a big capybara. The two mean the same thing. So just choose one. So a giant capybara or a big capybara, not both.
Now, Rory from TJS has done the same thing. He's given away, but it's a jaguar too quickly. But what I like, Rory, is your sharp lava teeth. That's an unusual expression there. Francisco, at that moment, something rumbled in the corner. A shape began to form, and it seemed to be a tiger beast.
Luca, and Reese from St Patrick's. You've got something going here. It needs a bit of work, but it's starting to go. At that moment, something growled louder than thunder. It's a full stop, so you need a capital letter. Out of the water, not one but two bleeding eyes appeared. A flash of red and white teeth. Now, full stop, so you need a capital letter. It was ginormous. Never use the word ginormous. It's kind of a slang term. It was enormous and drippy. It threw back a dead body and screamed out loud. So there's quite a lot going on there, and with a bit of tightening up and a bit of editing, that could be really good.
Yeah, I think it's worth slowing the action down.
Yes.
Gabriel from Forest Academy. At that moment, it was standing there and staring at you. A shape began to solidify out of the shadow. So Gabriel's borrowed your solidify idea and used it well.
Now, Louisa from St Patrick's. At that moment, a medium fluffy figure appeared in front of him. Two blue eyes fixed on him as the creature moved closer. It's working well, but I'm really having a problem with the word medium. So it's when you're describing something, you want, if you want to build up tension, you need to go to extremes. So I'm not sure that medium adds anything to the description. Just a fluffy figure would be better than a medium fluffy figure. A fluffy figure appeared in front of him, or a figure, and then describe covered in grey fur or grey shiny fur. Something you could do something with. Fluffy doesn't really paint a picture for me. If a medium fluffy figure, I'm thinking of those little toys that you get. What were they, David? The little toys that were little small fluffy things.
Furbies.
Yes, Furbies. I'm thinking Furby.
It's the word fluffy, John. It's a bit too friendly.
Yes, doesn't really give you any threat.
Jacob from Ludham. The creature slowly bent its head down to lick the red-stained shaggy fur. I like that, Jacob, because you said red-stained without mentioning that it's bleeding or anything like that. And that works well for me. Margarita, hypnotizing eyes looking deep in your soul. It's a nice idea. I think you can strengthen the looking. Evelyn, I like this one. At that moment, something moved, threw its head back and roared. So you're still hiding what it is. And then what we call a sentence fragment, eyes like fire. What you've done is you've implied the verb.
It had.
Its eyes were like fire. You've just gone for eyes like fire. And then the sharpest teeth, a big cat with a coat of patterned fur.
That's great, actually, Evelyn.
I think, Evelyn, that's really powerful writing.
Yes.
Breaking all the rules.
Yes, but works really well.
I think we need to come out, don't we, John?
We do. We need to come out of but there's some good stuff going on there. With a good tightening up. There's plenty of things to go for. So we'll have a quick look at the gallery.
Yeah, now we didn't have much time on this one. So have we got anyone had time to only a few?
Yes.
Yeah. Oliver did had a stab at it.
So that was Eliza and Oliver at Ludham.
And Luke had a stab at it as well. Just quick sketches, really.
Yeah.
We probably needed a bit more time on that one, but well done for having a go.
You scroll down a little bit. There's a nice one from Ellie. Is it?
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, John's lost now. He's a lost cause.
No, up a bit more, John. It would have been just refreshing.
Let me just refresh my page. No, can't see one.
Sorry, just refresh it again, John. I promise you'll be there.
No, it's not.
Turtle.
Never mind. Well, I'll go back in and have a look later. So we'll go on to today's gallery challenge in the teacher notes.
Now, because that was a black and white one, I've gone full hog with the color, John. Now, this time I've had 3 goes. This was my first go, and I did it very, very quickly. I was pleased with the look of the houses or blocks of flats on the left and the ones on the right, but that orange strip. And I did this really fast. I mean, that took me about 5 minutes. And I was trying to get a view up a road with the houses, bit of a sunset. So then if you go to number 2, I then took more time over it. Quite like the perspective. I thought the moon worked quite well. I thought, the dark going down towards a tinge of red in the sunset. I thought all of that worked reasonably well, but it was a bit cluttered. So I thought, right, I'll have another go. So this is my 3rd go. It's a bit clinical. I don't know. There are different bits, John, in each one that I like. But what I wanted to show was that, you learn by doing it, and then you look at it and you think, well, I like that bit, but not that bit. And then you can have another go. It's fairly easy to do, that one. I was using a brush to get the thin lines. I was using a flat brush sideways on. Most brushes in school are great big chubby things, and you could never get a thin line like that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're still sticking with the street scene, but this time painted.
This time's painting it, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, with trying to work on your perspective. I think you need a bit.
That perspective isn't the perspective in the road. The purple bit doesn't work. If you go back to page 4, the one above, it's slightly better.
Yes. It's perspective is quite hard to do, and sketching out perspective lines. I'm sure some of you have done that in school.
Yeah.
That can work quite nicely. But let's see what we come up with. So we've got the street scene with perspective painted.
Yeah, and what I did with that, John, was very much. I just started with a very faint pencil sketch. So I sketched the houses either side, the box of flats, then tried to get the perspective, and then I went back and did the colouring. And of course,
we need to crack on, Pie.
With watercolour, the key is you've got to let the bits dry. If you don't let the bits dry, they'll all blend into each other. It'll look awful. Yes. Okay, chapter 2. If you remember, he's being chased. I'll be having that, the man said, grabbing Joseph, plus any cash, and then he chases him. And the chapter 1 ended. He noticed a small doorway tucked behind a pile of rubbish, and a moment later he was inside. Chapter 2. Outside, a jagged claw of lightning crackled across the sky, and thunder growled overhead. Inside, Joe staggered through the building, searching desperately for somewhere to hide. Old timbers leaned at crazy angles, rusted crates piled high, and discarded machinery lay scattered. To his horror, he could just make out that there was no way out. He was trapped. Behind him, the strange man stood illuminated in the doorway, a knife glinting in his hand. Joe gasped. But at that moment, something growled deeper than thunder. Out of the darkness, not one but two 2 orange eyes appeared, a flash of grey and the whitest of teeth. Whatever it was burst past Joe and stood between him and the man. It was huge, huge and grey. Joe realised that he was standing beside a massive wolf. It threw back its shaggy head and howled. In that moment, the man had fled. Joe stood rooted to the spot, paralysed by fear. The wolf turned and knelt down in front of Joe, resting her head on the ground. He could see that she was wounded. A gash of red ran across her side. He'd never been so close to such a huge creature before. He could smell an earthy, musty scent and watched as her pelt of grey fur rippled across her back. They stared intently at each other, and Joe felt that she was sizing him up, seeing deeper and deeper into his very being. But his fear began to fade, and he held out his hand. She leaned her head forwards and sniffed, and then she licked his skin with a rough pink tongue. Her eyes sizzled as if heated by fire. He could see kindness, but also a well of sadness. It was then that she spoke, a low, gravelly voice that seemed to spring from the ground itself. It was a voice of rock and wind and mud. "I need your help now," she slowly said. "We must find the gateway." Joe stared back, his head nodding as if he understood. He knew in a moment that he would do anything to protect this huge, beautiful creature. Anything. "They will be back," said the wolf, "so I must hide." 20 minutes later, Joe and the wolf had slunk through the streets down to the old warehouse by the Stroud Water Canal. No one ever dared to venture there. Rumour had it that the ghosts of navvies haunted the building, but that last summer Joe had made an entry. He often sat inside watching kingfishers flash across the water's edge. The wolf curled up in a dark corner and slept. Joe kept watch. So you've got to get that tense bit at the beginning, the creature appearing, frightening the strange man or bullies off, and then the creature bonds, makes a link with your main character and speaks to him or her, and then they've got to go and hide. Now, used that trick 20 minutes later. So I didn't describe how they got there. I just had a big time shift. 20 minutes later, half an hour later, 10 minutes later, and then I got them into this old warehouse down by the canal, which there is in Stroud. So I was pulling on something I knew. I got them in there and they're hiding in there. And of course, what's going to happen in chapter 3? The guards from the checkpoint are going to be going to find them. So we're going to really rack the tension up in chapter 3. But this is chapter 2. Have a look at the structure of it, and you'll be able to see some of the techniques that we know about and what we've been practicing. And as I read it, I spotted more errors, John.
Yes, I did. And one question for you, Pie, which
Yes.
children might not know: the ghosts of navvies. What's a navvy?
It's a technical term for the people who used to work on the canals.
Yeah, the people that actually dug the canals.
Yeah, the
That's-
navvies.
Yes.
So it's a technical term that was used, say, 150 years ago, 100 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So get your character. Your character's meeting your creature, and we're looking for tension. We're looking for surprise. We're looking for lots of really good description in your writing. So get your blog posts in and record them for us. That was a terrific one we had this morning. So it'll be great to if we had something as good as that one. Was it Carrie? Sorry, I can't remember. Carrie, thanks, David. That was absolutely terrific this morning's piece of writing. So we've got a lot to live up to there. Pie will go back to his editing.
It's when you read it aloud, it's interesting. It's why we do response partner work, where you sit in pairs and the author reads it to the partner, or the other way around, because when you read it aloud, you notice these things, you can hear them.
Yes, right. Well, we're out of time. Really good session this morning. And we will see you again next week for the next chapter in our SF Said Tyger story. Great stuff. Bye-bye now.
Yeah, bye everyone. Some really good work this morning. Well done. Great work.
Well done, everyone. Can't wait to see what you get up